So this is the October 28th meeting of WeThePeopleMeet.org, and today we're discussing more of the None Dare Call It Conspiracy book, as well as just whatever we feel like talking about politically and otherwise. And we got Rob Crawley and Kent Bowman today. So yeah, we'll start with that. Um, I don't remember exactly where we left off last time, but I think it was somewhere around we talked about the control of the political parties, we talked about the control of the media, and then before that, the different uh, Council on Foreign Relations power that they had when it came to wars and things like that. But I think we were around 93, 94. Uh, so it just continues talking about the power that this group, the Council on Foreign Relations, has had throughout the world. Even um, they there's a Bilderberger group that's really gathers together a bunch of world leaders every year for a Bilderberger meeting, and most of those or everyone that started that steering committee was a Council on Foreign Relations member, and you'll find I've just found whenever anything interesting is happening in the world or in the United States, there's always some link to the Council on Foreign Relations, which over the last many years, and so this kind of continues that discussion. And before we get into each of the pages here, do you have anything you want to talk about, Kent?
Nope, just keep going. That's great.
Okay. Okay. Um, so Henry Kissinger, who was Richard Nixon's right-hand man, he also was a proven Soviet spy, um, and he was part of the Council on Foreign Relations, and he brought a lot of the Council on Foreign Relations policies to Richard Nixon's presidency. Interestingly, page 98 talks about the Rockefellers being one of the chief families in the Council on Foreign Relations. They helped they helped move it along throughout the years. David Rockefeller, I know, was the president of the Council on Foreign Relations for about 30 years. When I was a child, or even a teenager and a little older in life, he was the head of the Council on Foreign Relations. Just quiet in the background, leading that group, but a lot of the direction came from him and dispersed amongst all the people there. Just like um, a lot of everyone that was a founding member tended to be a really wealthy banker in the beginning, and a lot of the goals of the Council on Foreign Relations were to help them increase their money, but also to the goal eventually was the New World Order, where they have power over the whole world. Um, let's see, 99 through 101 talks about Herbert Hoover helping to save the Bolsheviks from ruin. Um, the history of Russia, as I understand it, they had tsars and things like that had a lot of power, but they weren't communistic, and they didn't starve their people like a lot of the things that happened when the communists took over. But that in order to get rid of the tsars, you had to have the Bolsheviks come in and take over, and we helped fund them through, we meaning the United States, through our government, but also through a lot of the big bankers helped fund the Bolsheviks that overran the czars, and then paved the way for communistic Russia to take power. Um, U.S. traded materials needed for war to Russia during the Vietnam War, and Russia provided war materials to the Viet Cong. Therefore, we were killing our own soldiers by proxy in the war. That was a point in the book, that you could track, our materials going to Russia, Russia then providing them to Vietnam, and that has been a common thing throughout history, that we will often build up a group, and then they'll get somewhat powerful and too powerful, and then we'll have to fight them, and that's been something I've seen over the years. 104 to 107, the Rockefellers and Eatons controlled Russia and the communist movement. Um, And 104, 108 talks about David Rockefeller setting the policies for the Nixon campaign through a secret meeting called the Compact of Fifth Avenue. So I didn't know the history before I reread this. I'd forgotten a lot of it, but Nixon beat out Nelson Rockefeller, and at that point, um, I think David Rockefeller or Nelson Rockefeller, one of them, met him at Fifth Avenue, and after that, it seemed like he was in the Rockefeller's pocket, and they promoted him and I guess helped him to the presidency at that point. Um, oh, I remember now. Kennedy won in 1960, and Nixon was basically a washed-up politician at that point, but he moved to the same street as Nelson Rockefeller, ended up working for the Rockefellers, and they kind of promoted him back to where he could run again, and he became president 8 years later, I think it was, or 4 years later. Um, when Nixon became president as a Republican, he accomplished more for the left and pro-communist Rockefeller agenda than a Democrat could because the Republicans basically wanted to defend their president, and the Democrats didn't want to object to his leftist agenda. So he actually was able to push forward more government spending and more of the leftist agenda than anywhere else, than any other president before him, and spend more money, etc. And the last part, I haven't finished rereading the book, so my notes only go to page 124 and 125, but that talks about something interesting that the a lot of the leftist programs are pushed forward in the United States by pressure from above and pressure from below. There's a chart in there that shows, the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Council on Foreign Relations elite are pressure from above, trying to push us to go more socialist, spend more money, get more in debt as a country. And then you've got the pressure from below, which is people on the streets marching. Back then it was Students for a Democratic Society back in the 70s, the Black Panthers, Yippies, YSA, and Common Cause, um, pushing for change in the government. And nowadays, it's the same groups from above trying to push for us to be more of join world organizations to become more of a new world order, coming from the Council on Foreign Relations. And pressure from below, uh, kind of causing chaos in the streets so that people will think that we need more of world government to help us control things, is Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and in both time periods, it's proven that the below groups, students for the Democratic Society, was funded by the Council on Foreign Relations members back then, and today, same thing. These groups, every time a big riot arises in the streets, there's every time in my lifetime, there's been ties to the Council on Foreign Relations because that is a stated goal of the communist socialist groups, is that you got to get pressure from below and pressure from above if you want to make changes to the governments. So and I've been looking at the No Kings. I took a little bit of time to see who's funding No Kings protests, and they have on their website a list of all their partners. And so I always keep things like this because I like to be able to refer back to it. So I took a copy of all of their partners, and they have them just on their website, all the logos. It'd be nicer if it was a list and who funded it and all, more information, but I at least can always go back to the logo and see who it was and do the research later. But someone put out a list of who is funding it, and I noticed that the list that came out of who's funding it matches. Um, I tested a bunch of them, and a bunch of them are officially on the No Kings list of who's funding it, and they put out who is funding it. And George Soros is a member of the Council on Foreign, has been. I don't know if he is now because he might have tried not to associate, but he started the Council on Foreign Relations in Europe. And his son, Jonathan Soros, is a member, and he's the one that funded the Tides Foundation, billions of dollars into that. He's put tons of money into Black Lives Matter, into Antifa, all these groups that are causing chaos in the streets. Almost all of them you can trace back to George Soros. who has been a socialist his whole life and tried to push America to be more socialist and more towards the communist end. Tides Foundation is funded by George Soros. Rockefeller, of course, he's the Rockefeller Foundation has been the leader of the Council on Foreign Relations. They're basically hand in hand, and he's funded a lot of the money that's gone into these groups. Um, Ford. I, I haven't tested all these numbers. These numbers seem a little bit high because, well, no, 300 million is what conservative radio show hosts have been saying. They've tracked and found that $300 million has gone into the No Kings protest. And that's how they're able to rise up so fast. They pay organizers all throughout the country to get people to come out. Warren Buffett, I don't know. Ford Foundation definitely has had CFR ties. I don't know that Warren Buffett has, but Arabella does. So, out of all of these, I know for sure that all of them except for Warren Buffett have ties to the Council on Foreign Relations, and I wouldn't be surprised if I looked into him that I'd find the same ties. But anyway, it's the same ones year after year. Ever since the 70s and 60s, funding these groups to cause chaos in the streets. They don't happen naturally. They have funding and promotion from the Council on Foreign Relations almost always, um, because the goal of the Council on Foreign Relations has always been to get us into a new world order, and for us to do that, we have to have enough chaos and enough problems in our country that we feel like we need support from the outside, and we need that support. And so that their goal has been to cause chaos here and then provide answers through groups that like the United Nations, the League of Nations, which ultimately failed, the Trilateral Commission, different worldwide groups that are to provide stability to the United States after they create chaos themselves to make a reason for that. And the whole point is it's just more power for the elitists, the global bankers to control governments and make sure that everyone kind of stays in line. Um, so anyway, thoughts?
Um, well, yeah, I still struggle with it, to be honest. In that I've just been, I don't know, I've just been involved with it, Civic and others, that it's really difficult to get, 100 people to agree on something.
Right.
Um, and so I look at, for example, the No Kings protests.
Uh-huh.
As you know, they were essentially violence free. There might
Right.
have been a couple of minor skirmishes in a couple of cities, but
Hmm.
99% of everything that went on was violence free.
Right.
And I had friends that went to it here in Salt Lake that I think they're strong Americans. They love our country. They're trying to make it a better place, and their attitude of why they wanted to go to that was more along the lines of, you know we have we have a constitution that the founding fathers developed, and as of course as we believe through providence from God, and and that constitution and surrounding principles set up checks and balances. And those checks and balances are the critical aspect to keep your democracy, so that no one party or one frame of mind can hijack, the country. So we have the three pillars of, the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. And those are designed to separate those powers in a way that it takes almost a supermajority to make a major change in the country, that could, take us off path, if you will.
Mhm.
And so their main purpose for going was, they just believe that that balance of power right now is way out of whack. And we have a Congress that doesn't think for itself. It just says, what does the president want us to do? And they do it, right? And the judicial situation, where some of the very most basic principles of our country, of due process, et cetera, are being challenged, and pressure put on, every time a judge goes against what the administration wants to have happen. They are bullied and spoken negatively of, and so forth. And in certain cases, an army of people go out to look at their backgrounds and, dig up dirt and find things that they can to do to destroy that person.
Right.
And and in my lifetime, and I could have been blind. I certainly am not foolproof, but I've never seen that before. I've always seen a situation where, the powers to be within the constitutional parameters have played their roles. And sometimes it's been answers I didn't like. Like, for example, I've never been a fan of the ACLU. Um, but it was usually because they were pushing an agenda or a situation that I was on the other side of, right? But if I would have gone back to the days of the Mormon pioneers, if you will, and their situation in Missouri in particular, um, you know,
Mhm.
it would have taken something like the ACLU to fight against the government, Boggs and others, to say these people have a right to live. They just because of their religious beliefs, they cannot be imprisoned or forced to leave a community or whatever. And so it would have been something like, didn't exist then, but there would have been something like the ACLU that would have been the only thing that could have countered that.
Mhm.
And so I guess as I've grown older, I've tried to say, look, um, rules for living, standards that we live by should be something that is fair. It should be something that, certainly the majority uh, will have a greater influence on where we are. That's by definition. That's why we vote.
Mhm.
But the majority should never take that power to the extreme, to the extermination of every little thing they possibly can that doesn't agree with what they are. Now, if it's something that is, clearly life threatening or something like that, certainly.
Right.
That's why we have laws like, thou shalt not kill, or drive on the right side of the road, or whatever it is. But but just because you have a view that isn't popular, uh, it shouldn't be that you are silenced. And I think we've seen that happen on both sides. But the thing that has always been there to protect that from getting too far out of control is the judicial system and the Congress and the executive branch having to, you know, tug and fight and push back and forth a little bit, to minimize the extremism.
Right.
And so I think that, the thing that I think most of the people I knew that were there, and they told me of other people they knew were there, this wasn't a group of, at least here in Salt Lake City, it
Uh,
wasn't a group of misfits, of anarchists, of, weird people with, wearing, I mean, obviously they had the costume stuff going on for some that
yeah.
was kind of making it fun, but
Uh-huh.
but not,
How to make it fun. That's the
yeah,
point.
yeah.
Yeah.
So but it wasn't like, oh, these are the dregs of the population that were out there, right? These were
Yeah.
people that were thoughtful and so forth, just saying this power grab has got to stop.
Hmm.
And and then what was it? Just 2 days ago, and again yesterday, we have the thought being floated again. Well, why not a third term? Why not a third term?
Yeah.
And a reasonable leader that believed in the Constitution would quickly dismiss that.
Right.
He or she would say, that's unconstitutional. That's not my intent. I'm going to do everything I can to try to, put forth a candidate that I think will carry on what I'm trying to do.
Right.
Totally fine.
Not to
But
mention he could die any moment.
yeah, that's right.
Older.
But
So,
for that person to kind of encourage it and say, well, I'm told by a lot of people there's ways we can do it.
mhm.
That is harmful.
Yeah.
That's very harmful. So that I think is what the No Kings, at least the people I've talked to,
Hmm.
were there to say is this has lately been a power grab. Another great example, and I've talked about this is again, was it this morning or last night that another 14 people were killed in boats, in the Caribbean or the Pacific.
That. Yep. Yep.
And that is something that should never happen by our country
Uh-huh.
without congressional approval.
Right.
Should never happen.
Hmm.
And even with congressional approval, it should never happen when there is a way to do it without actually killing those people, which there always have been.
Hmm.
So again, it's this idea that, well, one person is calling those shots, and kind of like you're saying with this, if this is true,
Uh-huh.
the uh, I always the CFR, I always want to say CFP, uh,
Uh-huh.
the CFR, the way that organizations like that work and win is they go out and they get somebody in place in a powerful position, right?
Right.
Then they can count on that person supporting them. And
Yeah.
that's kind of where we are on from the perspective that maybe you're saying as well, is you get a Pete Hegseth in the military that will do anything the president says without checking the legality of it, without doing anything. You
Yeah.
get a person like Christy Nome in
Mhm.
Homeland Security. You get a person like oh shoot, losing the name here, but that's over the financial aspects.
The Cash Patel or something like that.
Well, Kash Patel,
I forget the names of everybody, but
yeah, he's the FBI, but I'm thinking of the guy that is going after certain people because they put on their loan documents that this second house was going to be just that, a second house instead of an investment property,
uh-huh.
so that they theoretically could get lower interest rates.
Yeah.
Um, but again, it's obvious if you look at it that there was a list of people that in the cabinet that had done the same thing,
Hmm.
that they're not being pursued. But if it was a Letitia James, or if it was a who was the other? Um,
Hakeem Jeffries has been in the news a lot too, but for
oh,
the
no,
same
it
thing.
was a governor, Fed governor,
Okay.
woman, can't think of her name, but
Right, but anyone that's on the other side, they're going after
yeah,
them.
anyone
Yeah.
that's on the other side, they're
Yeah.
being pursued. But anyone that's on, the side of the administration, hey, it's a non-issue. It's a clear, obvious abuse of power, and if you want to use that term, everybody uses weaponization of the government.
Right. Yep.
So that's what I'm seeing out there, is that we've got, you can't even trust the heads of these cabinet positions to tell you the truth, because if the truth happens to not agree, they're going to minimize it.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
that's what we've got to get away from.
Yeah. Um, that was a lot. I took some notes that was a lot to think about, and I wanted to talk about my takes on a lot of that stuff. But no, almost everything you said I agree with.
And, and,
The
and
Mhm.
sorry to interrupt you just one second, but
Yeah.
I think you and I agree on the base principles we're talking about. I mean, I have never found anything that you said you wanted to have happen or believe should happen. I haven't disagreed with you. Where you and I are probably a little different is you tend to see that connection in the media more, the connection of the CFR uh, in
Yeah.
the media and how they're doing it. And I tend to see it more in the party right
Right.
now.
Right.
And we differ on that. But
Right.
if we
But
but I
I think as you talk though, I think we're coming more together on that the more we talk through it.
Yeah, I think so too. And
Yeah.
and I think if we sat down and took each one of those and did the 1,000 foot dive, right, we'd
Hmm.
probably come out with the exact same, yeah, this is incorrect because of, and especially if we could put a blinder over which party it was or which media put it out or whatever.
Which is that's justice is supposed to be blind, right?
Yeah. If we did
Yeah.
that, I'll bet you and I would come out to the same answer 99% of the time.
Probably.
Yeah.
The one thing that my theme has been throughout this is that just because it's not one individual, it's a group that's making the calls, it's not any less dangerous than if it's one individual. And
Mhm.
for the last 70 years, it has been a group that has been secretly controlling all parts of our government, on the media and everything else, acting as if it's a dictator, until Trump got in, and that group has finally got a strong enough foe to cause them some trouble, and of course they attack and attack and attack because he is their foe. Is he a great foe? No, he's a uh, playground bully, just like they are. Just he's fighting against them. So you have two bullies now fighting each other, and one of them's in control of the media, one of them's in control of the government right now. So it's a big battle going on, and neither of them I can I the reason I like Trump is because I feel like we've been bullied as a country to get our debt where it is, to get more socialist principles, to get more involved in world organizations, for the last 70 years against what the country was founded on. And finally, someone standing up to that. And whether it's a great person or not, at least someone standing up to the playground bully that's been there for 70 years and getting their way. And so that's what I'm seeing. And, I see him get attacked and sued, every which way they can because they're against him. And so I tend to take his side, except for when he's going against the Constitution, which you brought a lot of those instances up, and I'm 100% on the same page as you on those issues. But I will also point out when you have him attacking these boats coming over. I don't agree with it. I haven't agreed with it with any other president, but every other president has done similar things. In the Middle East, they'll go and attack a leader, whether we're at war with that country or not. If that leader's not doing something right, all of a sudden you'll hear, "Oh, we've taken out this person," and maybe Congress doesn't even know about it until after it's done or whatnot. It's the difference if Obama or one of the Bushes did it, they are on the same side as the Council on Foreign Relations, which is also in charge of the media, so it would be presented as a wonderful thing. Whereas if Trump does the same thing, um, the ends justify the means for anyone that's part of the Council on Foreign Relations, but they don't justify the means for Trump because he is their enemy. So you see the mainstream media attacking everyone but Fox News attacking him constantly for if he sneezes, and that's what I've seen since what was it, 2000? 15 or so when he got the nomination for the Republican Party. As soon as he got that, then he can't look sideways without being attacked by the media. And it's because he's attacked the Council on Foreign Relations indirectly and directly.
But help me understand which other let's go back to um, so Biden,
Mhm.
um, Obama, Bush two. Um, who is between Bush one and Bush two?
Bush one, and then Clinton, and then Bush two.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's go back just to Bush one and then forward to through Biden.
Hmm.
Which players did they take out?
Well, Saddam Hussein.
Okay, but wait, that was a situation where the United States had declared war on Iraq
uh,
through Congress,
yeah,
and we had military and everybody and their brother defending Kuwait against Iraq.
that's true. Um,
That he was a war criminal. He was part of the
which one
government.
did we say there was ma weapons of mass destruction? Was that the second time in, or was that the first time
That
in?
was the first time.
That was the first time, and that was all made up. What there wasn't weapons of mass destruction there, but it was made up and promoted because I believe it's because the people in the Council on Foreign Relations wanted us to go to war there for whatever reason to get more control of that area. And
And that could be, and I'm not just I don't know. I know a lot of people said that there was conflicting intelligence on it,
right,
and then somebody pushed it like, well, we better be safe than sorry, and Bush bought that, and so we went ahead and attacked. But
right.
that was a situation where Congress was
This is on
involved.
board. Uh-huh.
Everybody knew. So
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm not prepared. I'd have to really research into it, but I
yeah.
know it's the case because I complain when Trump does things like this without getting congressional approval. But I've complained about that since I was 15 or 16 and seen it from every single president. And I can't remember now, off the cuff, but I do remember being upset about every single president we've had that has not gotten congressional approval about the attacks that they put throughout the country. And a lot of times I have looked into it and found that it's the freedom fighters that we've attacked at times and supported and then helped support the regime coming in that's more communistic. Without getting congressional support, that has happened through every single president. And I could document it, but it would take some time.
Well, just
And, yeah.
and I'm not giving you a homework assignment because I
Yeah.
don't, I don't have the authority to do that. But
Yeah.
just find a couple of them because
Okay.
I've thought back on it myself, and obviously I can remember the one where they took out Qasem Soleimani,
Uh-huh.
uh, which was the Iranian general
Uh,
that was in Trump's first administration, where he had him assassinated with a drone in Egypt, or it was a different country.
uh-huh.
And then these situations with the boats.
Hmm.
Um, but I can't think of another one. There was Osama bin Laden, but
Hmm.
again, that was a situation where Congress had approved us going after him as a war criminal that because of his attacks on the Marines and all those things that we can document, the attacks on
Yeah.
the 9/11 towers in New York and all that. So
Right.
those were specific retributions that were authorized by Congress because we had been at war with Iraq,
Mhm.
and we had declared war against ISIS
Yep.
and against the Taliban.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
that's a very different thing than what Trump did with Qasem Soleimani and with these boats. So
Yep. And I'm 100% with you that he shouldn't do that without getting congressional approval. I'm just saying my claim is that every president has and the media only attacks them because he's not part of them. But the other and I'll see if I can find
Okay.
situations like that. You
Yeah.
mentioned separations of power. Absolutely agree with that too. That I'm going to pull up this from and I'll be able to remember a lot better as I go forward because around 4 or 5 years ago I started this website where I document, what presidents do, good or bad. So I put Rand Paul in the Wall of Fame here because he is not giving in to Trump, who's trying to be a dictator in this case. Um, he's trying to convince Rand Paul to support some things that Rand Paul doesn't want to support. And President Trump's trying to bully him into doing that. And he's done the same he's been trying to bully Thomas Massey, who's a really, really principled conservative, follows the Constitution like Rand Paul does. And Trump gets angry and throws a tantrum and starts bullying these people. Um, that are principled conservatives because they're not going party line, which he wants them to do. And party line is not important and shouldn't be important to most Americans because we should be following the Constitution in all cases. But unfortunately, most of what happens in Washington is to promote one side or the other between the Democrat and the Republican Party. And what I've been claiming is that there's been leaders in the Council on Foreign Relations that are leading both sides, both the
Mhm.
Republican Party and the Democratic Party. So it's been, slowly working our way towards socialism over the last 50 years. I mean, we've gotten into socialized medicine with Obamacare, which really hurt me personally in my business. And I can go into more of that another time, but we have slowly been going towards socialism because of that. But yeah, um, going back to this, Rand Paul is not giving in. He's saying, "Hey, I'm principled. I support Donald Trump most of the time, but if he goes against the Constitution, I don't." Which is why he would have been a better president than Donald Trump in my mind. Um, Trump posting AI video of him dumping poop on protesters, that was not presidential at all.
Mhm.
Uh, but anyway, another thing that I thought of, before Trump had gotten too far into deporting people, the news media attacked him like never before when they were just taking out the felons and people that were dangerous. Now I think they're going after more and more people, but from the beginning they attacked him like no other. And Obama was called the deporter in chief at times because he deported so many people, and the news media gave him a pass, because he's one of them. So, he's one of the insiders. So,
Rob, let me give you one thought though
mm,
on the deporting of the hardened criminals.
right.
You know, I think the media, and again, I'm sure they've done plenty wrong. I'm not defending them,
Right.
but they when you when the administration
Uh,
does not step up and say, here are the 80 people that we're putting on this plane and sending them to Venezuela.
mhm.
Here are their names. Here are the crimes they've committed. Here's where how we know that crime took place
Right.
and how it was adjudicated. When you don't show that, you are inviting criticism.
Yeah,
And it played out big time. And I forget the guy had a long name, but there was Garcia in it. Remember him?
I do. Yeah.
He was the guy. And this is why, again, I have no respect whatsoever for Christy Nome
Hmm.
because, the media was asking the question,
What did
you
he
know,
do? Yeah.
why is this guy believed to be MS-13?
Uh-huh.
What criminal acts did he do? Why is he being viewed as one of these 80 of the worst?
Right.
And her answers were because, I mean, it was a child, that wasn't her answer, but it was like that. It was like,
Yeah.
because I say so, right?
Right.
And so then the administration went through all of this rigmarole then to bring new charges against him for things that clearly if he had done them, he
Hmm.
would have been charged by somebody already. I mean, it
Hmm.
could have been the local police, the state police, the FBI. It could have been anybody would have, if he had done what they then accused him of, he
Right.
could have been charged with that. But then they brought those false charges, and
Mm.
then and then they said he's on the plane and he's in Venezuela and we can't get him back. There's no way we can get him back.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was like they were talking to 5-year-olds, and
Right.
so the media,
Well,
by definition, rose up and said, "You're lying." And at the end of the day, they were lying.
mhm.
It was, it was shown that the reason he was viewed as an MS-13 is he had I forget if it was a 49ers hat or a Chiefs hat. Well, that, a lot of people wear those, right? I mean, it's not if that's the only thing you got, that's not enough.
No. Well, and I looked into it a little bit with him and think there was some evidence that he had been charged of domestic abuse and things like that. But
Totally irrelevant to, I
right.
mean,
Right.
that's what they trumped up after
After
everything
they let him
else they
go.
threw
And
out
I guess
there
he and
externally.
then there's the AI, who knows if it was AI generated. I don't know for sure that he had MS-13 on his arm, which isn't a crime either. To
No.
have something on your arm. I don't know if that was AI that put it there or not, but like you said, that's irrelevant. The real question is can you deport people because they're here illegally? Is that constitutional to do that? All presidents in the past have done it. Obama did a lot more than others for whatever reason he did that. Is that constitutional to do?
Well, it is
Mhm.
if they have not followed the law, meaning, what Trump and I'm working in this community. I think I've told you that
Right.
before.
Yes, yes,
So I see a lot of immigrants.
yeah,
Half of them are citizens, half of them are here on asylum seekers, right?
right.
Now, I'm not a big fan of the current law uh, that has existed under all presidents of both persuasions that say if a person comes across the border and claims asylum because they are being persecuted, attacked, tortured, whatever, then the United States has to accept them and give them a date for that claim of asylum to be adjudicated.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Uh-huh.
then if there's facts that say, yeah, they are at risk of their life, then there's a way they can stay in the country. If it's not, then they're deported. Okay.
Right.
And a
Hmm.
lot of the deportations that Obama did were people that had come and made asylum claims but couldn't substantiate them. And so
Hmm.
they were deported.
Yeah.
So my view is what the two parties are doing is they're talking over each other.
Hmm.
And so, for example, the Republicans are saying these people are criminals because they are not here legally,
Hmm.
and they're throwing anybody that's here under an asylum case as not being here legally. And
Hmm.
evidence of that, Rob, is every day. I mean, I got little 10 and 12-year-old kids where their parents came here seeking asylum. They were with them, or they were born here subsequently. And if they're born here subsequently, they're supposed to be citizens.
Yeah.
But the ICE has come in, taken those parents that have lived here 10 and 12 years, that are seeking asylum, and the only reason they don't have a green card or other situation is the courts are so backed up that they can't get a case. They can't get before a judge. So
Yeah.
ICE comes in, they take that parent out of their home in two cases I've watched, off the streets where they were walking to church, our church, in two cases,
Is this
and
in Utah?
in Utah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Uh-huh.
right here. Two of them. I've met both of them. They're wonderful people.
Yeah.
The best people, the hardworking people.
Uh-huh.
But they don't have a green card and they don't have citizenship because they came under asylum from Venezuela, which they were threatened with their lives. And so they take them, they deport them. And now the kids, the 10 and 12-year-olds, and in another case, two grandparents that are 85 years old and can't work,
Uh-huh.
they're here with no breadwinner.
So
Now
that's part of the reason why I wanted to start this group is to stand up to things like this that are wrong. Doesn't matter if it's Trump or Obama or Biden or
yeah,
whoever it is. We need the states should have the right to stand up to things that going on in their state that are wrong like that, and the people should be the ones to stand up against it when they see those kind of cases. So I'd like to support you in fighting against that for those individuals too. I don't know what you
and
can do.
just to finish this, so we've raised some money
Uh-huh.
among 5 or 6 of us, several $1,000s, and we've bought airplane tickets
Hmm.
for these kids and these grandmas to go back to Venezuela because they can't survive here now.
Yeah.
And so
Are they going to be safer here without their parents than they will be with their parents in Venezuela?
they can't be safe here because they can't live here. I mean, in other words, unless I start paying their rent and buying their
Mhm.
food and paying for their college education, in other words, someone has to do that. And
Right.
all of the entities that have been helping immigrants in the Salt Lake Valley, there's only about 3 left out of about 30
Uh-huh.
because they've been threatened by ICE that if they are found to have been aiding and abetting an illegal person here, they will be charged and will have jail time.
Wow.
So Catholic Community
So,
Services,
so what are our government leaders doing to help with
nothing.
this? I mean,
All,
we've
all
got
our government,
Democrats and Republicans in the state. Neither side is willing to stand up
the,
on this.
well, the Democrats can't do anything in Utah. You know that.
Right.
They
Well, they
can't.
can make their voice heard on something like
Yeah.
that, though.
And that's happening. I mean, there's
Okay.
there's like Luz Escamilla as an example that's up there saying, we claim to be a Christian believing people in this state, and look at what's happening to these people.
Yeah.
They're being, talk about the Good Samaritan. We're worse than the priest and the Levite.
Hmm.
We're not only just walking past them, we're throwing gasoline on them and striking the match. And
Right. Yeah.
and so they're powerless, and the Republicans are all running for cover. They're all, well, if we step up and raises a problem, then Trump is going to identify us as a sanctuary city or sanctuary state, and we're going to start seeing our funding reduced and all that. So the Republicans are saying nothing. So nobody's helping them. There's nobody except uh, neighbors and a few, where there's 3 organizations left in the state
Yeah.
that are helping, and
Well, this
and that's it.
because if we don't stand up for those that are being treated poorly that are on our side, that are on the other side, then when we're being treated poorly, who's going to stand up for us? So that
Yeah.
we the people have to stand together, no matter what side we're on, and support those that are being treated bad. And these people, it's really unfortunate for them because they were. I think the previous administration, in fact, I know they were going even sending people abroad, encouraging them to come over illegally. And I think it was so they can get more people voting Democrat
Yeah.
because they tend to vote Democrat. And now they are here illegally, and now the current president is, shipping them back and, separating families in this case. And so it's really unfortunate that they're just being yanked around one way and then the other way by our government over time. And I don't agree with either side. I don't agree with the side that encouraged them to come, which previous
I
administration definitely did.
I would love to see the evidence on that comment. I've heard people say that.
Uh-huh.
I've looked for it. I've looked in the Biden administration. I looked in the Obama administration. Um, you know, it, and most of these people, okay,
Uh-huh.
if that were true, that those administrations were sending messages to Venezuela and
Mhm. Yeah,
and
sure.
Nicaragua and Ecuador and all these places, Mexico, come on in, come on in. We're going to take care of you, and we're doing this because we want you to vote for us in the future.
Mhm.
Well,
Well, they wouldn't say that part,
they
but
wouldn't say it,
it
but if
just
that
is a
would be the
fact that they get the support
implication.
of them. Mhm.
But the bottom line of what I'm trying to say is that if they were doing that, they were creating more desperation in the US on the hopes that they would vote for them sometime. And these people, the path to citizenship, to where you can vote,
Hmm.
is at least 10 years for anybody. I mean, and most times they can't ever get there. They can maybe get a green card, but you can't vote as a green card holder.
Hmm.
Okay. So this idea that they were doing it to get more people that would vote for them, these people, 8 out of 10 would never become citizens.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, I mean, in the Democratic cities, then they don't make you show any ID to vote, so they'll accept anyone.
No, they still no, they still have to be on the rolls.
Uh-huh.
Whether they show ID or not, they have to be on the rolls. And if they are not a citizen,
Uh-huh.
it is a felony. And there's people in prison for voting that are not citizens.
I think
Huge.
that's a big fight right now is that Trump is trying to demand that no illegal immigrants can vote, and I think the Democrats are fighting against that. I think that's a battle going on now. Yeah.
That's not, see, this is what frustrates me about this kind of discussion,
Uh-huh.
not with you, I'm just talking in general with the public,
Right. Uh-huh.
is that
Slippery.
those are not facts. The
Uh-huh.
fact that Trump is saying we've got all these illegal people voting, that's not happening. It's not happening. And you can look at it because even in the Republican states, when they went in and did these exhaustive audits of the rolls, yeah, there were some people that voted that shouldn't have been on the rolls,
Uh-huh.
but it was like a minute number. And
Uh-huh.
most of those that were in that situation had died and hadn't the records hadn't been updated, or they had moved to another state and the records had not been updated.
Uh-huh.
So it there was nothing to do with immigrants or illegals that was creating any kind of a voting problem.
Uh-huh.
And so it's just not a factual statement. It's political theater.
Uh-huh. So Texas finds thousands of illegal immigrants registered to vote on state voter rolls. Secretary of State Jen Nielsen says 2,700 potential non-citizens flagged through da da da.
Okay, but stop there for a second.
Uh,
Go back. This is Fox News
this is
reporting
Fox
it.
News,
Okay,
right? Yep.
and then notice they find thousands of illegal immigrants registered to vote,
Hmm.
and they have remember thousands, right?
Right.
Thousands, and then
Uh-huh.
you have to look down to see, oh, it's 2,700,
Right,
right?
right.
Which is if every one of them voted, wouldn't have changed any elections.
Sure.
And
Yep.
then secondly, that doesn't say they did vote. It's just that they found them on this thing. If you then go in and look at how many of them actually voted, it was like 100.
Uh-huh.
And you know, so it's just they're making headlines that don't really matter because 99% of the people that are here as immigrants and are not citizens are not trying to vote.
Right. Right. Yeah, I can agree with that.
You
They're
know?
they're here they're here for a better life. That's why they're
Yeah,
here. Now, I do believe that the problem is caused by having a very, very poor immigration policy and to make it hard for people that are good people that want to come here for work or whatever, they have a very, very difficult time getting citizenship and being able to come over. And I think that's part of the problem by both parties.
it is. And
And
I go back, I blame the Republicans and I blame the Democrats for
me too.
that because
Both.
we could have taken, we had the opportunity
Hmm.
about, what was it, 15 years ago or so, that we could have taken, that if the Republicans would have compromised and said, anybody that's here as DACA, you know who I mean by that?
I remember that from years ago, but I can't remember what it
Yeah.
stands for.
What it means is they were children of people that came here illegally
Uh-huh.
or never received citizenship.
Uh-huh.
And and I think the number at the time was like a couple of million.
Hmm.
That the compromise that was put out there was, if we take all those people that are DACA, they've lived their whole lives here. They don't, if their parents were from Venezuela, they know nothing about Venezuela. Or if
Right.
they were from England, they know nothing about England. It's they've lived their entire life as Americans. They've gone through our system here,
Hmm.
etc. We would give those 2 million people a path to citizenship. So we take them off this roller coaster of, oh, this presidency is going to kick you out of the country, and this presidency is not. And so they've never been able to be totally secure. So we say, okay, let's make those 2 million secure and give them a path to citizenship. And then in return, the Democrats would say, all right, let's tighten and redo our entire immigration system such that we have um, we have the ability to monitor anybody that comes in the country for any reason, and they can't come unless they have these three visas, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really tough to get into the country, like it is into most European countries, without advanced permission, and without, if it's a tourist visa, it ends in 60 days, and there's a way to track that to find that person and get them back out of the country, right? So we could have tightened up our immigration system so we could really tell who was here, and in return, we let the DACA guys have a path to citizenship.
What about the border? Because it's still it's been so much easier to get here illegally than legally. That's the problem.
Well, and I think there was I can't remember the details, but there was increased border security. I don't know if that was, probably
And
wasn't.
both sides agreed on border security so, verbally until someone named Trump actually
Yeah,
tried to do it. You know what
yeah.
I mean? Both sides were like, "Yeah, we need border security," until someone actually believed it enough to actually do it, which is a shame. But border security is important if you're going to do any of this. Otherwise, it's all just free for all back and forth.
Well, but part of it, and I think I've mentioned this to you before, part of it is getting the people like you and me
Uh-huh.
to quit talking about, oh, that's Big Brother watching me,
Yeah.
and make everybody in the United States carry a card or a chip or something
Uh-huh.
that tells law enforcement your status.
Yeah.
So, and there's only have to be like six statuses, right? There'd
Yeah.
be a citizen, there'd be a green card holder, there'd be a student visa, there'd be a tourist visa, and there'd be an ambassador, kind of a foreign ambassador office kind of visa, and I
Hmm.
forget one more. So you'd be one of those six,
Yeah.
and then law enforcement, anytime they stop you for turn signal, running a red light, uh,
Right.
whatever, they have the right to say, okay, Rob Crawley, show me your card.
Hmm.
And you have to show that to them or show them the chip or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then they say, okay, you're a citizen. Okay, fine. And
Yeah.
if you're not one of those six, then you are taken to jail and deported.
A- Absolutely. It's common sense.
It's easy. It's not that
Yeah.
hard to do.
It's not.
But
But Congress doesn't want to do that.
yeah.
Otherwise, they would have done it.
And and it's because we now have the extremist crybaby Democrats that are going, oh, that's Big Brother watching us, and they'll use that data to hurt us sometime, and on and on. And then you got the crybaby Republicans that are going, well, that's Big Brother watching us, and I'm too important. I mean, look at me. I'm obviously a citizen, and I'm not going to be
Yeah.
subject to the same thing that those guys with brown skin have to do. I
Yeah.
mean,
I would
it's
I
just
would I would hope there's not much of that. But
there. You'd be, well. Look at. Did you read some of those statements out of the young Republicans when they?
oh yeah, those guys were ridiculous,
It
and
was
I'm glad
awful,
they
right?
I'm glad that yeah, in fact, I mean, what did I put on my side about that?
Yeah, you had the.
Speaker of the House condemned them. But
But, but why
but
didn't
like
the
you were
president?
mentioning, the maybe that should have come from the top. At least someone condemned them. Uh,
Yeah,
in on
but
the Republican side, one of the top leaders did, which is good.
but the president didn't, and the vice president didn't.
Oh, I think now the vice president,
He went the other way.
he defends the shame young Republicans. What's with
Yeah,
that? So
yeah,
I put that in here on the wall of shame because it's too he's being partisan again. If
yeah.
anyone from the other side said stuff like that, he would have been, right there
Uh-huh.
condemning them. But he said, "Oh, they're just young kids. They weren't young kids."
Yeah, it's just it really is. Everything has you have to figure out if it's an R or a D first,
Right.
then
It's
make
ridiculous.
your answer. It's just plain unchristian. It's just plain wrong. So anyway, we beat that to death, but I
Yeah.
really think we could have had an immigration system that would be working and working well if we would have had a little bit of compromise 15 years ago or 20, whatever it was.
Right, right. And I would go back and argue that's because there's people that don't want to solve the problems here in the United States. That's a common sense, easy fix with both if both parties just get together and talk common sense. But I just don't think they do. I think that the majority of the people running this country are part of the Council on Foreign Relations that don't want those things to be resolved. And I go back to that because it's just always there. Anytime you see a upheaval, the Council on Foreign Relations is behind it one way or another. So anyway, I would argue that we don't get common sense results because both parties are infiltrated by groups like that are not
And
among.
maybe it is, and I'm saying, maybe it is this CFR, tentacled system out there like the Gadianton robbers that
I, I
is doing
think that's
exactly what you're saying, right? I'm
I
not
think that's
convinced.
why the Book of Mormon talked about it so much for those that are members of our church, for us to see, that coming, is that is one of the main themes of the Book of Mormon. Besides Christ, one of the second or third themes of the Book of Mormon is the secret combinations that will be here in our day that we need to look out for. And so I think we are more prepared as a culture here in Utah to see this. And interestingly, I've never found one member out of the 5,000 members of the Council on Foreign Relations. I've never found one to be from Utah or in Utah living here or anything, not one. And I think it's because this CFR got exposed early on in Utah by President Benson, who was part of government. He saw this group, he knew these people directly and individually, and he outed them in our state back in the 70s, I think it was, maybe even 60s and 70s. He outed them really heavily. I think they stayed away from our state for the most part.
Yeah. Well, I could believe that for sure.
Mhm.
So anyway, I really appreciate the insight you brought to me regarding this. You know, I'm still looking at it. I'm not con I'm not a convert yet, but
Yeah. Well,
there's many things you've said, and
mhm,
the fact that you've got evidence of it being insidiously enthroned within both parties.
mhm.
uh,
Yeah.
that's an interesting fact because you do,
Doesn't matter whether it's Republican or Democrat, they fill their cabinets with CFR members to the hilt. I mean, hundreds of top cabinet members until even Trump in his first term, he came in thinking, oh, what I say goes. He didn't go and replace everybody. There were still CFR members running almost every facet of the government under him the first term. And he found that everything he tried to do didn't get done. And so he started firing people. He came in the second term and just put the top people in. The people weren't part of the Council on Foreign Relations. And so they're loyal to him, which makes it look like a dictatorship from him, which it kind of is. The presidential powers are too great in this country and they're being abused by all sides. But anyway, I could go on. But
well, this has been a good discussion today. Thank you.
yeah, thank you. I will we'll touch base next week, not with you, but whoever else can show up. I'll find someone else interesting to talk to next week. I have someone in mind that I might bring on board that's got some interesting things to tell. So
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, Kent.
Thank you, Rob. Have a great day.
You too. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.